If you've ever heard a crashing chandelier, a soaring high note, or that iconic organ medley, you already know we're talking about the Phantom of the Opera. In today's episode of the BSB Podcast, we're exploring the music and stagecraft behind the mask. In our last episode, we talked about themes from the show that were tied to these characters. Themes of obsession, themes of property, themes of identity, really centering on three main characters, the Phantom, Raoul, and Christine, which surprisingly, we were both Team Phantom. But if you want to know why, you got to watch the first episode, because you got to watch the first episode. You have to find out there. But in this one, we are going to talk about the music. And RJ, I have to be honest, rock opera is not exactly something that you tend to see. And yet it works so well in this show. Why rock and opera together, and why does it seem to fit a story that is set back in the 1800s or even farther back? I don't remember exactly when this takes place.
I mean, where are we getting rock opera from? Is that how it's classified?
I think that it is classified as a rock opera. But I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up because I do want to make sure I am telling the truth here. Hold, please.
I'm so curious.
It's generally classified as, a musical or a romantic gothic musical rather than a rock opera, though it is sung through an opera and features rock-style instrumentations. A true rock opera is Jesus Christ Superstar, which I've never seen. So,
yes, a true rock opera. Well, I can't say a true rock opera because I'm not sure what it is, but actually would remind me of the previous show, Kinky Boots.
Okay.
That feels more like Headbanger to me than Phantom of the Opera. Phantom of the Opera, I mean, of course, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's classic musical theater. And I know, like, that doesn't mean much and when it comes to genre because it's so specific, but it gives the ornamentation is very theatrical. It's very dramatic. And obviously the organ feature is what makes it give that opera feel, I think, and it makes it feel dated because
Sure.
like how often do we hear an organ nowadays?
Not often.
But I can understand where like rock, like the themes are very harsh, right? Like the themes that we know and love from the show are very bold. They aren't soft. They aren't, gentle. They're just like, here's how it is. And it's very powerful. Even during the ballads, like all I ask of you, while it is a softer song, it doesn't feel small.
Sure.
It's still, I mean, like I would still put it at like a medium mid-level. But it's unique. I mean, there's not another score like it. I think because you do have those pieces of opera in there, because obviously it's about opera. So you're going to have the Think of Me. You're going to have, I would even say Masquerade is kind of operatic. You have the Don Juan. You have like all of those pieces of them literally singing opera. And arguably a lot of vibrato is happening in this show. And for those of you who don't know what vibrato is, it's basically just a facet of the voice, the way in which you're making sound, pretty much.
It's technically like when you volley between a half note up and a half note down, correct?
Yes, it's when you're going in between those notes for artistic purposes, like to make the sound be a specific way. Operas have a lot, like they're basically exclusively vibrato. Musical theater is kind of a balance where we have straight tone, which is the opposite of vibrato. And then you have vibrato, usually at like the end of a phrase. It's supposed to make it sound prettier or more,
Sure.
more detailed. But yeah, what is there to even say about the score of A Phantom of the Opera?
Can I just, though, so I looked up a rock opera, and it is a genre of music that blends rock instrumentation with the dramatic narrative storytelling of opera, typically through song. So while all songs aren't like that, could you make an argument that the Phantom of the Opera song is technically a rock opera song then? Because it uses electric guitars, it uses a synthesizer, it uses all of these different things. There's also opera in it because at the end, she is going in operatic as he's asking her to sing more. So to me, like in my head, I'm thinking that song is rock opera, even though this apparently is not operatic of a show.
Um,
Sorry, I'm being a nerd here for a second. I thought you were gonna nerd out.
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't even tell you why it doesn't feel rock to me. I think it's just because I think it might feel that way because of the strong, the Phantom of the Opera theme, right? The dun 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 dun. Like you just, it feels intense. It feels like you could probably headbang to it. People probably do. um, and yet the vocal side of that is a little bit gentler or more gentle. Um, right? Because she's kind of singing this like very fluid, pretty line. And then, yes, she has the kind of uh, runs at the end, the infamous runs at the end of the song, which, yes, you could argue that that's like very aria-esque. Um, but
Which
opera, you'd be doing it the whole song. Like, I'm just thinking of like some classical pieces that I've sung, and like literally all you're doing is the runs for 4 minutes solid, comparatively to like, what? There's probably like 16 bars of a 6-minute song. But I can understand why it would be perceived that way.
I was doing some Googling real quick while you were talking as I was listening. Thank you for all of that wonderful information. But I guess apparently it is the two things of why it can't classify as an opera or an operetta.
Operetta.
Operetta is that they use microphones, and apparently you can't with operas, and that there's no arias in it. They use operatic idioms. So whatever that means. I'm not an opera person.
Yes, I can see what they're saying. Um, Interesting that they say that you can't use microphones, because like for sure operas use stage mics. Um,
Sure.
so there's like you can't fill a house of 3,500 people with just people singing on stage.
Sure.
Um, but yes, I would say it's got operatic style. It's pop. I would say it's strong pop. It leans, you know, towards, if there was a spectrum, it would be leaning towards rock.
So it's more like a pop musical is what you're saying.
Yeah. But that's even hard to say, because like I actually consider pop musicals to be like Dear Evan Hansen. Like
Correct. Or like a
this
6.
is yeah, this is just like true, tried and true musical theater. Like this is the belly of the beast. It is your ballads, it is your power numbers, it is the dynamic duo of most classical musical theater shows from the, what I'll say, golden era of musical theater.
And when you're talking about the golden era of musical theater, what's very interesting about this show to me, which I love, is how the music really sets the tone for how creepy this show can be. And again, I'm going to go back to the Family Opera music, but when they are opening up the chandelier at the beginning, like we're going right at the beginning, it opens up, the show opens up, stage, silence, they're kind of talking, and then they they reveal the chandelier, and that music just starts. What a major way to start a show. Like that overture as the chandelier is going up to the top of the ceiling, as the smoke and the lights are kind of flickering, as it yanks off the covering. It's really interesting how that just sets the tone so well of being like a creepy show. It is a very creepy show, especially when you see it in an opera house, which I think we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But as much as I love so much of this music, I think that to me is such an iconic moment that it always just kind of steals the show for me. Like the reveal of the chandelier and the music that accompanies it, just is so iconic.
Well, it does exactly what it's meant to do, right? Uh, the shock factor, especially for someone who's never been to it before, just it physically is bringing you in. You don't get too many shows that physically take you to a place rather than just watching a place. Like this show, and again, we can talk about the fact that it was literally in an opera house, which handholds the whole premise, but you're just in the space and you feel like you're in that opera house, like to your bones. Like, yeah, with the second those chords hit, the second the chandelier is revealed, you go from like, I mean, obviously you're paying attention when the show starts, but you can't help but just literally be snapped to attention. Because also, holy smokes, the volume on on that as well, which it is. I mean, literally, I could feel the vibrations in my chest. And of course, like we
Yes.
were sitting in the orchestra level, so we're gonna get pounded with sound. Um, but it's supposed to hit you deep in your soul, and it definitely did. And it's a sweeping score. Obviously, Weber knew what he was doing. And those who study music do. Like there is a science to music and the way that it makes people feel. And he plucked those exact right notes and buttons to hit us that way. And that is part of the magic and why, I mean, Phantom is such a phenomenon overall.
For sure. Like you are automatically on the edge of your seat. Also, for where we're sitting and a lot of people are sitting, you're looking directly up at the chandelier. Granted, we were looking like up and to the side, but you're watching the chandelier, which is like beautiful in its presence, but it's just like slowly floating to the top. And granted, there's some stuff happening on stage that you could be paying attention to, but like you're just drawn. Like it says we have begun. And it just starts off there, and you don't have time to quite. You're going. The show is song heavy. You're just going into song after song after song. Many of them are fantastic. Some of them are not some of my favorites. And so I think that is. Let's talk about Think of Me. This is the second real song of the show, and it's absolutely one of my favorites. I sing it all the time. RJ, I'm sorry you've had to hear me sing off key and out of tune for this, because I do think that sometimes I can hit it and I can't. But truly, this is one of my favorite moments of the show because it's such a sweet song. And it was the first time in the show that I said, oh, this is not the song from the movie. Most of the words to Think of Me have been changed for the movie, which is wild to me.
Yeah, this is a show that, so interestingly, so many pieces were changed for the film. And I feel like nowadays, like movie musicals, there are obviously differences, but they aren't so starkly different. And for some reason, I don't know if it was just at that time they thought it was a good idea, because really it didn't change anything. Like it wasn't like they changed any of the plot points or anything. I truly just, I don't understand why the lyrics were so different.
I'm gonna take a real big swing here, and I'm sorry to those who love the musical. This is not a slight against you guys. I'm so glad you love the musical on stage. Think of Me in the film, the lyrics are significantly better because I think it's more poetic. Like one of the lines that always sticks with me is flowers fade, the fruits of summers fade. We have our seasons, so do we. And that's not in the show. And to me, I was like, that's such an important line because it shows that people come into your life and some people are meant to stay and some people aren't, and both of those things are okay. And so to me, right off the bat, that's not like, think of me in the show almost felt like a lament where she's almost like pining after the person she lost, where the one in the film is, you're gone and that's okay because we had our moment and we did something beautiful together and then we all move on. But I hope every once in a while you think of me when you're going off to live your life. And I think that was the difference for me, where I was like, I think that they improved upon it to be a little more like hopeful instead of sad. Because think of me in the show is quite sad, actually.
Yeah, I mean, just uh, again, a little bit of research. Um, Really, the only thing that's stated is that it was changed for the visual plot of the
Okay.
film versus the live theater version, and eliminating the British slang or words, um, which I guess because in the film it was pretty not British.
Correct.
So I can understand that. And obviously there's a little bit of adaptation too with where Raul sings in it and how
Yes.
that's different. And so I'm wondering if the rhyming and if the feel of the song was changing, or like in order to make that work, they had to change it. Because obviously in the musical, he's just like sitting there. And in the movie, if I remember right, he's sitting there, but then he's also like moving. Um,
He gets up and leaves
so
the box and walks down the hallway.
yeah, yeah. So like, even though you wouldn't think that that makes a big difference, it kind of does, because like now he's not looking directly at her. She's no longer. We're not seeing her on stage. We're taken away from her. Um, but yeah, but arguably, I mean, this happens throughout the show, right? So there are many different facets in which that could, you know,
Right.
be different
I,
for different reasons.
I think one of the things that's really noticeable in that aspect too is the Phantom of the Opera. There's actually another whole verse in the stage production, which for those who only know the movie, you're not going to know those words, and it's fine. Please don't sing when we have these amazing, talented people up on stage. Keep that for your drive home and stuff. But I almost forgot, because if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong here, RJ. When it's on stage, they actually change the key as it goes to that second verse. Like something changes, like either add more like instruments or like it goes up an octave or something, and it's sung slightly different. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that.
For which song? For the Phantom of the Opera?
For Phantom of the Opera, yes. Seems like
I
they're
mean,
in the boat
maybe
and
it
then something
modulates.
changes.
Yeah, maybe it changes key. Um, honestly can't remember offhand, but that wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't shock me at all.
But of Act 1 then, what song is your favorite? Do you have a favorite? Is it Prima Donna?
Absolutely not. It's one of my least favorite songs. Although it is one of the, like, technically one of the most difficult. I mean, here's the thing. I love All I Ask of You, even though I do not like Raoul. And then I love the Phantom of the Opera. So really, I'm getting both, right? I got the Phantom song and with Christine, and I have the Raoul song with Christine. So those two are pretty much it for me.
Okay, listeners, come closer, come closer. We're about to have a moment. RJ, I hate All I Ask of You. With the exception of the only part of All I Ask of You that I like is the Phantom's reprise, because it is so good. It is so haunting, and that's a really cool way to end Act 1. All I Ask of You is so boring. It's
I mean,
so slow.
it is very repetitive. However, also, I think the show slows it down. I think in the movie it's faster.
Yes.
Which
Correct.
is arguably, yes, I would take the soundtrack version over the musical score. But clearly you were never a musical theater nerd in middle school and high school who in the dressing rooms we were all singing this to each other because, that's what you do when you're a child and you think that you have a crush on someone. And this is just the iconic, dramatic song that everyone knows. Like, definitely like one of the top karaoke songs for a duet, even though nobody at that age can sing it correctly, but we all thought we could. So
I
maybe it's just like nostalgia for me. Maybe it's not even my favorite. It's just the nostalgia of the playfulness of singing it 1,000 times.
What is crazy to me is that, I met you as an adult. We were adults. I had a different song picked out for your favorite from Act 1. I thought for sure it would be the music of the night because it feels like that one is the most melodic, especially for the Phantom's voice, which is something I felt like that was something you would have connected on. But if I'm taking this a step further, correct me if I'm wrong, the music of the night and All I Ask of You use the same melody, at least for the chorus part of it.
Yeah, there are some lines that are like, again, Webber being Webber, he's intertwining a lot of these melodies underneath and over top of, and like the irony of that happening, right? Music of the night is
Not your
apparently
favorite.
what All I Ask of You is to you. Like it's slow, it's the same, except for literally like the last phrase where he goes up and floats in his head voice. But it's also like the creepy song, right? Like that is the song where he is kind of seducing, quote unquote, her. Um, so I think maybe that's also why it gives me like the ick.
Sure. And before I go on to Act 2, I do have something I want to point out about the Phantom in this one. And I talked with a few people who've seen it. They all agreed, but they're not music nerds like you. They don't have a degree somewhere. I've never seen your degree, but you have a music degree somewhere. RJ, correct me if I'm wrong. The Phantom's voice was higher for this production of the Phantom of the Opera. He was not as low as some of the other ones that we have gotten, correct?
So here's where it gets complicated because it depends on what you mean by higher and lower. So the songs themselves were either in or very close to the original keys. So all of the
Okay.
music was sung the same. So it wasn't higher or lower per se. However, the tone of his voice, the timbre, I should say, of his voice was warm. It wasn't dark,
Okay.
like we're used to. So even though he was literally singing the same thing, because of the way that his voice is literally built, it did sound almost kinder and
Sure.
less scary.
Yes.
Even when his voice was bouncing around for those few scenes where they make that magic happen, it was like, oh, like it's cool, but it's not particularly like intimidating or
It's not
terrifying.
haunting.
Yeah. Um, but I think that's just like per the individual, and that's based on casting too. Like, I don't think, and I didn't even look at that part of his bio to see, well, it doesn't really say if he's a tenor or a baritone or a bass. I would imagine that he is a baritone leaning tenor rather than a baritone leaning bass because of the timbre of his voice. But yeah, it's an interesting piece.
Apparently, he is a baritone with an extended vocal versatile range and not a tenor.
Interesting.
He apparently has a video on Instagram about it.
Oh, well, I might have to do some recon on that. Because otherwise it would just say like basses are usually, I mean, when you're talking to a true bass. So it's very obvious that he's a baritone. And the Phantom does need to be one of the few and far between that isn't just a straight up tenor, and it's not a straight up baritone. Because he has those like very high, we talked about Music of the Night. He ends on an incredibly gentle high note. That's all up in his head voice, which can be hard to do if you are like a bass, because that's typically way out of the
Sure.
range, depending on what your range is. But
Because what's interesting is I didn't feel scared by him until All I Ask of You, when he got really deep, and as he's singing to Christine, like almost like, you're going to regret this, And so that was the first time I felt scared by him, because he didn't feel scary. He felt, again, he had like a dreamlike quality to him. And there wasn't a lot of other spaces or songs that I really felt him being scary, including one of my favorites in Act 2, Masquerade, which usually I feel like the Phantom is terrifying in that one. And he didn't feel terrifying. He felt, I don't even know what word to use, but I do think that Masquerade is one of the best songs of Act 2. I will go down swinging that most of Act 2 I could probably leave, which is probably blasphemous for people who love The Point of No Return. But Masquerade, I think, is one of the best songs, but he's not intimidating in that song. It's like, he's not scary. I'm not terrified of him appearing. So I don't know what that says about me and maybe his voice.
so interesting. I'm biting my tongue a little bit because I looked up what part of the Phantom is written to be, and it is written to be a high baritone or baritenor, um,
Okay.
which technically seems like that is exactly where his vocal range might fall. I think what was lacking, like you kind of mentioned, is what they kind of claim as the booming part of the voice. Um, there wasn't a lot of boom, which is
Correct.
like a not great adverb. But it just, the part that typically I envision coming from like the bottom of your gut, like when you sing and you're singing maybe something that's lower, or you want it to sound really, really deep or booming, you're singing it from like your toes. And I'm so
Right.
sorry for all the non-musical people who are like, what does this even mean? But it's like, I mean, singing is a full body experience. So when you're singing something that's deep and booming, you're going to be using your whole body to do that. And it just didn't feel like that was the direction that they wanted the Phantom to be for this production.
Maybe that's just because I'm so used to Gerard Butler's Phantom, and I looked it up, and he's a gritty baritone with a gravelly tone, is how it's being described, which is probably why it feels so haunting and like that. It feels like you're almost being gut punched. And so maybe I just didn't have what the Phantom should have been in my head. And so, like, this is like, obviously, this is what they are aiming for, um, which doesn't necessarily feel scary, but also maybe that adds to him being a little more sympathetic. Why we're a little more Team Phantom.
Yes, I do think they were leaning across the board, vocally, acting wise. They were leaning into a softer, more lyrical, even more operatic um, Phantom that just, yeah, maybe more human comparatively to, yeah, the movie version where I mean, honestly, you don't even really see him as human in the movie.
He's like a ghost.
Yeah, it feels like a ghost. He feels like something otherworldly, whereas this production felt like his humanity was being reclaimed.
Yes.
Um, and so in that sense, this production did a very, very good job of achieving that, because I mean, here we are talking about it.
And so, of course, before we close out the music part of this, why don't you tell the people why The Point of No Return is one of your favorite songs from Phantom of the Opera?
I mean, there's nothing like acting within acting, right? Um, we know I'm a dramatic person. I love the drama of the drama. And so this idea that they're both on a stage acting around each other and ultimately trying to trick, I mean, he's trying to trick her, but then in the end, she's kind of tricking him. It's just the game that's being played is very intriguing to me. Of course, all like through song. Um, And I don't know, it is very like, maybe
It's
it's
very
the
theatrical.
romantic in me that is very like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's sensual. Um, I mean, it's probably the most sensual that we get in the entire show. And
You don't even see his face.
yeah, I don't know.
Says a lot about the romantic and RJ. Ladies, he wants to. Never mind. Um,
That was going so well for you.
yeah, we were gonna go somewhere, but we decided to not. Instead, we're gonna go talk about.
We're past the point of no return. So
We are past the point of no return. So I do want to talk about how maximalist the show is. So they opted for the original production / tour production, so much so that they gave the director like the credit to Harold Prince, who is the original director of the show. He's still the director of the touring production, which I thought was crazy and wild. But I think it explains why they decided like that how they opted for this really maximalist production. I had heard that it was going to be 31 trucks rolling in, rolling out. That's kind of what the thing was. If that wasn't, I'd love for somebody to correct me on that one. But truthfully, this was a show that had sets, had costumes, had magical curtains, and we all know I love a fucking magical curtain. So, RJ, this impact, the chandelier too. Oh my God. Okay. This show is huge when it comes to sets and the costumes. Did you appreciate this aspect of the show? Because I feel like this is almost like a character in and of itself.
I was not expecting it to the degree of detail that we got, because I mean, it literally was like seeing it on Broadway. Every
Yes.
detail, everything was there. Like when the candles came up for the whatever we want to call it, dungeon sewer area layer, I was like, oh my God, the amount of time to roll that in. And I just looked it up, 17 to 20 semi trucks.
It's a lot.
I'll just say again, on average, because being working back of house, like we saw the semis come in and out. Um, on average, like shows had a couple of semis. The only exceptions typically being shows like Hamilton that have like a full stage. And even then, it's still nowhere close to 17 to 20. So it's just insane to think. And also I'm thinking of, for those who don't know, like loading a set into a building, it's not like the whole back of the theater opens up and they just unload this set. Most of the time you have a doorway that is no bigger than maybe a garage door, an average
Correct.
garage door. And they are physically one piece after the other rolling stuff, oftentimes through the theater, through backstage. Sometimes it's not even directly onto the stage, um, and then setting it up. And so I would love to see, and there probably is one out there. I would love to see a time lapse video of the set build for the show, because between that and the chandelier alone, you have to make sure
Absolutely.
you have to install a whole piece. You have to make sure that it's the right leveling and all of those. It's just insane. I was blown away um, by literally everything about the staging and the set.
It was so. And I think it's a good call when people are going to see Family Opera, and this is the first time it's toured in America since it was on Broadway. People are expecting a certain level of quality and storytelling. I don't think that they could have pared this down and people would have been okay with it. I think it would have been similar to like what we got with Beauty and the Beast, where people would have been a little upset that like it was so boiled down. This one, you almost had to go big because you were not going to be able to pull this off anyways. And it is so impressive. The costumes are big and huge and comet accurate. The rolling in of the pieces on the sides where you had like the booths were really cool. I also was amazed by the candles. I was like, how did they get those to come up there? Like there was just, it was truly theater magic. Not just the chandelier, which was beautiful. Every aspect of this show, I mean, even having the conductor above the, like, so that you could see them standing, it all felt so Broadway theatrical that I could not imagine anything else but this full production of so many trucks rolling everything out. It was just so magical. It was absolutely magic.
Yeah. It takes 3 days for them to build it every
3
time
days.
they go to a city, which is insane to think about because a show is touring, let's say from Tuesday to Sunday is typically the show run. So I imagine literally can't be the case for the show. It must be Wednesday, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah. So like literally by the skin of their teeth, they're typically coming in probably Sunday night. And what that means is there's probably 2 sets.
Oh.
This is also what Hamilton does, at least, or did touring. They have a set that's built and they have a set that's traveling to the next place. So that by the time the rest of the tour company gets there, the set is at least halfway done. Because the turnaround time is so fast, especially if you're going to a city that's further away, um, you have to have it done already. And so I would imagine that this is very much the same, except holy cow, to have your set rely, especially in the wintertime, like if one truck gets stuck in a winter storm, like you don't have a quarter of your set. So
I will just say this. I just looked it up. They call them jump sets, and there are multiple sets for Phantom of the Opera. So not even just 2, there's multiple.
yeah, because literally you can't teardown is typically a lot faster, like it is with literally anything. Um, but building it up and then testing. So before every single performance, you can bet that they are testing the candles, they're testing the chandelier, they're testing every single cue, every single light cue. They're testing every microphone, of course. They're probably running the boat once or twice. Like it's just insane to think about. We don't have musicals that are built like this anymore. And so to do all of that in especially on a 2-show day, I don't know. I do not know how. I mean, they probably just don't take breaks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was from 2009. They had 2 sets then. And they have where they can also be adjusted depending on which place they're going to, if it's a smaller theater or a bigger theater. It happens in a week in advance. So like this is already at the next location. Right now it's currently, while we're filming, it's in Detroit. They'll be in St. Louis on February 18th, which means that the second set's already pretty much built in St. Louis to be tested, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, well, and again, people wonder why tickets to this are so expensive, comparatively to a lot of shows that we see nowadays. This is exactly why. You're paying in 1 month. I mean, you're paying the company, you're paying the crew, and then you've got, I don't know, 40 semi-trailer truck drivers uh, driving cross country. Um, and
Yeah.
then, of course, the orchestra as well. I'm not sure. I didn't look to see if they have a touring orchestra. Some orchestras hire in locally when they come into a city. But with a show like this, I'm not so sure that that would be the case. Um, but also, it's probably a bigger orchestra because it's built like an opera. You need more instruments. It gives a fuller sound. So, I
Just looked it up
hundreds
for
of
you.
people are on payroll for this show. So I understand why everything is exactly the way that it is. but I don't think anyone goes home disappointed.
I will just say, I looked it up. They did slim down the orchestra from the Broadway run, but it's still 14 musicians that travel around with a 38-person cast for this tour of Phantom of the Opera, which is still impressive.
That's still quite a few to be
So,
traveling.
so before I let you go then, would you see Phantom again?
I mean, yes. Even though, ironically, before we went, I was like, do I really need to see Phantom again? Because, like, obviously, you know the story, you know exactly what's going to happen, you know what to expect, but it is literally just the holy crap moment visually that you don't get it. And I can't think of another show that compares.
I will say that I think that we didn't touch on it too much, but I think that the effect of seeing it in an opera house definitely made it like a must see. Like if it ever tours the Detroit Opera House again, I have to see it because it added to the atmosphere. It made it feel like you were actually a part of the show and not just observing the show, which I didn't have that feel when I saw it on Broadway because it didn't feel like an opera house. Like this felt like you were walking into a piece of history and you're watching it come up to life. And I would have seen it regardless any time it tours, but like this just felt different in a way that it was just a more alive show, and it was for me. This is a show for me. Like it's a show for everybody, but it's a show for me.
It's for the tried and true musical theater lovers.
And so with that, we are running out of time. However, stay tuned for future podcast episodes from shows here in Detroit and on Broadway. In the comments, let us know what your favorite song was, and if you are seeing this when it rolls into a city near you. Thanks again for joining us here in our box seats. Until next curtain call.